This production is brought to you by the University of Edinburgh.
The University of Edinburgh has many significant links to Africa as a whole. Firstly, it's been a place where Africa has been studied really throughout the long history of the university. In the 19th century, many significant explorers and missionaries to Africa received training here at the University of Edinburgh. John Kirk, who was second in command of the Zambezi expedition, did his medical degree here. Mary Slessor, missionary to Nigeria, did her missionary training at Murray House, which is now part of the University of Edinburgh. In the 20th century, many future leaders of Africa did their undergraduate training here. Most significantly, Julius Nyerere, the first president of Tanzania. 2009 is important because it marks the 150th anniversary of when the members of the Zambezi expedition first entered the region we now know of as Malawi. They mapped the region, wrote about its people and its natural resources, and informed the British public about this part of the world. And this really sets off 150 years of contact between the people of Britain and Scotland in particular, and this part of the world. The Zambezi expedition was important because it was a moment in history when the government of Britain decided that it would send out what it referred to as a civilizing mission to Central Africa. And the point was to try to determine if there are natural resources there that could be discerned by British naturalists. And using these natural resources, African people who live in the region could produce raw materials that could then be shipped to the United Kingdom. And by doing this, a new commerce and trade between the UK and Africa could be developed. And by doing this, you could do two things. One, you could find new sources of raw materials for the United Kingdom. And secondly, you would introduce legitimate commerce that could possibly end the slave trade, which was occurring at a very high level in that area in the 1850s and 1860s. And this concerned the government of Great Britain very much, as it was heavily involved in anti-slavery activities around the world, really. The expedition is important for Scotland, in part because the leading members of it were Scottish. Of course, the head of the expedition was David Livingstone, whom we all know, the famous David Livingstone from Blantyre, who went out to Africa before the Zambezi expedition and spent 16 years there, was the first person documented to walk across Africa, although it's possible a few people did it before him. And he also wrote books about the slave trade and about the geography and the people of Africa, and this excited the UK public quite a bit. The University of Edinburgh has a significant link with the Zambezi expedition in the person of John Kirk. John Kirk was born in Arbroath and came down to Edinburgh to study medicine in the 1850s. In studying medicine, he also studied botany, and he did very, very well. Kirk went on to be second in command of the expedition and was very important for how we understand it now, because his letters and his diaries contain loads of information about what happened on the day-to-day life, in the day-to-day life of the expedition. And his comments on the region are very important for historians today. Kirk also made maps of the region, and his maps of the Shirai Highlands and of other parts of what we now know as Malawi are the first detailed maps of the region, and they were published later when he returned in the 1860s. Kirk also did photography on the expedition, and he learned to do photography in Edinburgh while he was a student, and also practiced further while he was a medical resident at the Royal Infirmary. Kirk's photographs are the first photographs we have of the region, and they include pictures of plants, and they include pictures of canoes and what people did with plants, and he was very interested in landscape as well. All these photographs are now held at the National Library of Scotland. The University of Edinburgh is home to one of the most prestigious centres for African studies in the UK. And the Centre of African Studies is the focus for the scholarship on Africa that really is around the entire university. This includes work in the social sciences, in the humanities, medicine, veterinary medicine, and in biology and engineering. One of the most important activities that happens each year at the Centre of African Studies is the annual African Studies Conference. And this is significant because it's one of the largest annual conferences in the UK, and we also actively bring scholars from Africa to present their work to people in Britain.
This production is copyright the University of Edinburgh.